So you're about to start, or you've just started your A level. Do you know one thing that will get you ahead of the topics is being really, really confident with the AS content and know what to revise for each topic? Because every topic that you will study, or at least the most of them in A level, has some basics or some basic knowledge that you actually know already. So my tip is to revise the correct ASO topic before you cover the A-level topic at school. And that's what we will do today. We will look at the topics that you should revise for each more advanced topic. Let's get started. So let's start with physical chemistry, the topics that you will cover, and they are the same for all of the exam board. So these are the titles from OCR. But essentially, we have Kinetic, which is rate order Arrhenious. We have the equilibrium, so Kc, Kp, acid, bases, and buffer, thermodynamics, so Bohr-Haber cycle, or in general enthalpy. But in A level, you will add also Gibbs and entropy, and then redox and electrochemistry, so the all of the electropotential calculation and so on. So, if we look at kinetic, let's think about what you know already from this topic, what you've studied before. You've studied rates. Okay, so my tip here is to revise everything that you know about rates. This will be really important. So orders and Arrhenius, it's a bit more, it goes a bit more complex, but you know already how to calculate the rate. Okay, so how to calculate the rate, which is by, you've studied before, changing concentration over time. So think a bit about that. I would like you to revise all of the concept of collision theory, because when you think about collision theory, this will and all of the factors actually that affect the rate of a reaction relative to the collision theory, because this will explain the shape of the graph that you're familiar with when you calculate the rate graphically. Okay, so for the topic of kinetic, make sure you're confident with the collision theory and with the experiment that you've done before on how to calculate the rate. So a little bit of math here. Okay. Then, if we look at equilibrium, we have the new topic would be equilibrium constant with gases. So there would be some new equations that they're relative to the amount of gases and how to calculate the kind of concentration of gas, let's say, and Kc for homogeneous systems. So those are things that you actually know. So if we think about the homogeneous system, homogeneous means the same state. So you know exactly what this means. That is the same state. So for equilibrium, well, it's pretty clear the topic that you should study before it's that you should revise, and this is the one of Le Chatelier principle and equilibrium. So very important that you revise Le Chatelier. And the factors, well, and also using Le Chatelier, you can explain the changes in equilibrium. But also very important in AS, you do Kc and how to write Kc and the units. So very important that you are super confident with how to write Kc and its unit, because all of the equilibrium constant that you come across, they will be written in the same way. Products over reactants for homogeneous system, including just the same, the components of the same state, okay? And the units works by canceling things out. Okay, so that's very important, because this will be fundamental and probably one of the most important things to be confident with also for this topic, acid bases and buffers. So when comes the time that in your A level you will do acid bases and buffer, please revise everything you know about Kc. I mean Le Chatelier principle. So how the equilibrium counteract any change that is applied. And then again, the expression units are not so important in the case of acid and bases, but the expression is really important, maybe even how to rearrange it. So if you need to calculate one of the concentrations and you have the value of Kc, think about how you could rearrange it. This will give you very important preparation to study weak acids, but also buffers. And actually buffers, if you're confident in explaining Le Chatelier principle, and the changes that and how the equilibrium counteracts any change, you will be able to explain the buffer. Okay, so keep in mind this topic when you study buffer, because normally this is really difficult. And then, of course, you've studied before the basics of acids. So what I would suggest you to revise is a look at all of the equations that you've done before. So, for example, acid plus a base, yeah, to give a salt plus water. Which bases do you know? Can you revise some of the common acids, some of the common bases? Okay, so that's the basic for this topic. Okay, or at least the things that you have done before in AS that you can apply to this. And trust me that this will give you a big jump start. Okay, and thermodynamics. So a lot of new things coming in A level, because you will have Bohr-Haber cycle, entropy, and Gibbs free energy. So entropy and Gibbs free, they're kind of different new concepts. The Bohr-Haber cycle, however, you can very closely relate it to what you've studied about enthalpy before. Okay, because with enthalpy, very important that you're confident with all of the definitions. Okay, so definitions, I mean enthalpy of formation, enthalpy of combustions, the cycle. Do you remember how to do the cycle and how to work out the equation that you need to use looking at the cycle? Okay, as well as bond enthalpy and calorimetry. All of these, what are not directly related with this topic, but sometimes in very open question they come all together. Okay, so very important that you're confident with that. And another thing that that I was should not actually just entropy, I would say, just to make sure you're confident with all of the definitions and the cycles. Enthalpy of formation, enthalpy of combustion, and bond energy. Okay. One more thing, the concept of endothermic, exothermic, and linked to that also the energy diagrams. Okay, that's a very important one to revise. So do you remember how to write the energy diagram for exothermic endothermic reaction? Okay, those are the key things. And then lastly, we have actually redox and electrochemistry. So again, new calculations will come, you will come across. But I would suggest you to revise ionic equations for this. Do you remember how to write ionic equations? And you can link this ionic equation in the basic of the redox that you've studied before. So what I mean is the basic of half equations. Can you write half equations? Can you identify the oxidizing and the reducing agent in a redox? And of course, find the oxidation number. Okay, those are all very important because all of the rest of calculation with electric potential, cells, and so on, they will be based, of course, in this type of equations. Okay, so this is actually it for my help, and I hope you find it useful. So remember, study the basics and think about what you know already for each of these topics, because it will really get you ahead of your A levels.